Hey guys, my name is Mark Taylor, and today I want to talk to you about how hard it is to write a bad book. And yes, it's a bit of a clickbait title. In fact, it's definitely a clickbait title. I'm not talking about that it's easy to write good books. I mean that writing books is really tough. So writing a bad book is still really tough. Now, I am an author. I have written a book. I'm finishing up my second one, but I am much more skilled as a reader. I have much more experience as a reader. And so there are absolutely books that I do not like. Books that I have read and I don't like. But when I'm rating them, and if you are a reader, please rate books. Rate them on Goodreads, Amazon, BookBub, wherever you're at. But rate the books. I don't know that I've ever rated a book 1 star. There are books that I've really not liked and I've given them 2 stars. But 1 star would have to be almost incomprehensible, or this is impossible to even read through. Because if a book is competently written, if you can follow it, if the style or the writing ability of the author is somewhat decent, then it's probably getting 2 stars at a bare minimum for me. 1 star is the book that I have no idea what's going on. I don't know who these people are. I don't know what the author's trying to say. And I really cannot work my way through the meat of this book because it's so incomprehensible. That would be a 1 star book in my mind. I think about movies, and I love stories, period. It doesn't matter what the medium is. And I think about movies, and I think movies would be harder to make a good movie because think about all the continuity you would have to have. You have different people as actors, you have a different person as the writer, you have a different person as the director, a different person as the editor, you have a different person making the musical score. Think about how all of those different aspects with different people have to all work and mesh together and come together to create something spectacular or just something decent, right? Think about how one of those things could mess that up. I think about the movie Nightmare on Elm Street, and I think the musical score is so goofy. I think the movie's fantastic, but I think the music sounds like Danny Elfman when you've got Freddy Krueger running down the street with the long arms. And anyway, it's just so easy to mess one of those things up. And the same is true for a book. Think about it as a Rube Goldberg project where you've got 25 different steps, and if one of them doesn't work, then the entire process or the entire action of that Rube Goldberg project doesn't work, right? Or a golf swing where if you fix one aspect of it and 10 others fall apart, right? And so with writing, you have the plot, right? The plot has to work. So we're talking a beginning, a middle, the body, and a conclusion. Just to writing a book is difficult. To write something that's 200 pages long and has somewhat of a coherent structure to it, it's not easy. That's why I shied away from it for a long time. I'd written tons of short stories, and the thought of writing a novel seemed very overwhelming. And really, my wife basically said, hey, stop talking about writing a book. Either shut up or do it, right? Because I just talked about, I want to write a book, but it seemed very daunting to me. And it was daunting. It was a big task, right? So just writing a book that has a coherent plot is difficult. Then you have characters. You've got to come up with enough characters that inhabit this 200, and we're going to just say 200-page book, because to me that's kind of a minimum length. That's a small book. Let's say 200 to 400 pages is a normal average book. You've got to come up with enough characters that are different from each other, that all have some piece in the puzzle that people actually care about, that aren't just names, right? That's difficult. Then you have the conflict. If you are writing a book and there is no conflict, then no one's going to care, right? There's got to be something that the reader cares about and is invested in that says, oh, wow, what's going to happen next? Because if the reader's not asking what's going to happen next, then there's no conflict. No one cares about the book. No one cares about what's happening. Then you would hope that there's some sort of growth or dynamic aspect to the characters, that because of the things going on in the book, that they're different people by the end of it, that they start in one place and then they end up somewhere different, right? You gotta have a decent ending, right? You're trying to stick an ending because you've got all these pieces that are weaving in and out. You've got characters, you've got speech, you've got plot, you've got a conflict, you've got growth, and it's gotta land. You've got to have something that's at least feels like it's fulfilled the journey, that it has actually answered the questions, that it has actually tied up all the loose ends. And so you've got all of these different aspects to write a book. And here's the thing. You could do all of that and still have a crappy book. I mean, how difficult is that? Imagine this. Piano is kind of my, if I could play one instrument, it would be the piano. I think it's an incredible, beautiful instrument, and my gosh, I took lessons for free in college because they offered them, and I wanted to try, right? Anyone who's ever played piano, or anyone who plays any instrument, musical instrument, you could play all the right notes in a musical arrangement and still not have any soul or heart in the piece. You could hit all the right notes, you could play them all in the right order, the right tempo, and the piece is just completely flat. And the same is true with a book. You could get the plot, the character, the drama, the ending, and you could have all of that in the book, and it actually follows a timeline. You can follow the pace, and okay, we started here, we went there, and then we ended up here. And it was coherent, and I know what happened. And the book still stinks. Or you could even have where you just didn't like the book. And I think any reader has every right not to like any book they don't like, right? Just because someone wrote the book doesn't mean it's good. And just because someone wrote the book doesn't mean you have to like it. And so there's nothing wrong with not liking a book or even hating a book. There are plenty of books that I hate. Just because it's hard to write a bad book doesn't mean that you have to like every book. But just the next time you're reading a book and you think, this is the absolute worst book I've ever read. Is it really? Is it really the worst book you've ever read? Can you follow it? Can you follow the plot? Are there decent characters? Is this cliche just because it's bad writing? Or is it cliche because you've read 100 books and some of them have the same themes? Right? Because this is the thing you always see, oh, that's a cliche. Well, maybe it's a cliche because that's how life works, right? So just think about that the next time you're going to put a 1 star. I've seen so many reviews for like Grisham or Clancy who, even if they're not your favorite cup of tea, they're good writers, right? You can't, and I've seen 1 star books, 1 star reviews on those, big top selling books, big authors who are, very reputable, and 1 star, this is the absolute worst trash I've ever read. Come on. So until next time, my name is Mark Taylor, and as always, keep reading, and you're more valuable than you could ever know.